This is Session 4, Part B, Regulatory Issues for SOCE311 Establish and Manage a Practice. In our last session, we covered the health sector regulation, looking at statutory as well as voluntary self-regulation. We looked at the importance of the Health Services Commission. We also looked at professional associations. In this session, Part B, we'll be looking at Australia's workplace relations system. We'll cover national employment standards. We'll look at various other registrations that are key for your business. So this is Session 4, Part B, Regulatory Issues for SOCE311 Establish and Manage a Practice. In July 2009, the Fair Work Act was enacted, and with that act, a new Fair Work system was designed to protect the basic rights of the majority of working people in Australia. The act is supported by various government bodies. For example, Fair Work Ombudsman, the Fair Work Commission, and various Fair Work divisions of the Federal Court and the Federal Circuit Court of Australia. So, what work does the Fair Work Ombudsman do? Fair Work Ombudsman assists employees, employers, and basically workers around Australia in terms of education, advice, assistance. They also do a lot of compliance work in terms of promoting and monitoring of the compliance of various workplace laws. They also go about investigating and inquiring into any particular acts or practices that may be breaching some of these Commonwealth workplace laws. The Fair Work Ombudsman also represents employees who may or may not become part of legal proceedings. The Fair Work Commission. This commission is an independent workplace relations tribunal. They're responsible for maintaining a safety net of minimum wages and employment conditions. So Fair Work Commission is all about wages and employment conditions and ensuring that it is relevant and that workplace functions according to various regulations. They listen and investigate issues dealing with unfair dismissal, unlawful terminations, if there's any workplace bullying and harassments. So the Fair Work Commission looks at how workers are being treated in the workplace environment. They resolve any general protection claims, looking at bullying complaints, make changes to pay and entitlements in awards and registered agreements, and make decisions about industrial actions and union activity. If you want to learn more about the specifics of Fair Work Ombudsman and Fair Work Commission, go to fairwork.gov.au and you will be able to learn more about the specifics of what they do. So, when you are running and managing your practice and you're hiring employees, there are some key conditions with regards to wages that you should know about. And one of them is awards. There are minimum wages and conditions an employee is entitled to, and these are set out in modern awards. Awards don't apply when a business has an enterprise agreement, an EBA, or other registered agreements and the employee is covered by it. Awards apply to employees depending on the industry they work in or the job that they do. Enterprise awards apply to specific businesses as well. When an employee is not covered by an award or agreement, they are considered to be award and agreement free. Award and agreement free employees may have an employment contract. But the key thing to to really note down is that they are entitled to at least the national minimum wage and also applied national employment standards. The Health Services Award is an award that covers employers in the health industry and their employees who are in the classification in the award, and employers engaging in a health professional employee. So this Health Professionals and Support Services Award 2010, some of the examples of key health professional employees covered by this award include acupuncturists, aromatherapists, counselors, dietitians, homeopathists, musculoskeletal therapists, myotherapists, naturopathists, osteopaths, social workers. So have a look at this list of health professionals who are covered under the Health Professionals and Support Services Award. The Health Services Award also covers labor hire businesses and their employees who are placed with an organization in the health industry or working as health professionals. If you want to read the detail of what's in the Health Professionals and Support Services Award, please go to the sources and the references at the bottom of the slide. I mentioned earlier the National Employment Standards. These are 10 minimum employment entitlements that have to be provided to all employees. The National Minimum Wage and the NES make up the minimum entitlements for employees in Australia. An award, employment contract, enterprise agreement or other registered agreement can't provide for conditions that are less than the National Minimum Wage or the NES, the National Employment Standards. All employees in the National Workplace Relations System in Australia are covered by the National Employment Standards, regardless of the award, registered agreement or employment contract that applies. So it's important that you understand what are these National Employment Standards. What are these 10 minimum entitlements that all employees have to be covered by? So it starts out with the first one, which is maximum weekly hours. This can be 38 hours per week plus reasonable additional hours. Secondly, your workers can request for flexible working arrangements. This allows parents or carers of a child under the school age or a child under 18 with a disability to request a change in working arrangements to assist with child's care. So these are the 10 minimum entitlements under the National Employment Standards. Thirdly, there are relevant parental leave and related entitlements that they are afforded to. Up to 12 months unpaid leave for every employee, plus a right to request an additional 12 months unpaid leave, plus other forms of maternity, paternity, and adoption-related leave. Fourth is annual leave. All employees, except for casual employees, get paid annual leave. Full-time and part-time employees get 4 weeks of annual leave based on their ordinary hours of work. If they are shift workers, they may have an additional week. So again, if you want to learn more about the National Employment Standards, go to the various sources and the reference in terms of the Act, Fair Work Act 2009 at the bottom of the slide. The fifth minimum entitlement under the National Employment Standard is personal care leave or compassionate leave. Sick and carers leave, also known as personal leave or personal carers leave, lets an employee take time off to help them deal with personal illnesses and caring responsibilities and family emergencies. Usually 10 days paid personal carers leave, 2 days unpaid carers leave as required, and 2 days compassionate leave, unpaid for casual, as required. The sixth minimum entitlement is community service leave. This is unpaid leave for voluntary emergency activities and leave for jury service, with an entitlement to be paid for up to 10 days for jury services. State and territory laws continue to apply to employees where they provide more beneficial entitlements. Another minimum entitlement is long service leave. An employee gets long service leave after a long period of working for the same employer. Most employees' entitlement to long service leave comes from long service leave laws in each state or territory. So refer to your state or territory conditions. Number 8 is public holidays. Public holidays can be different depending on the state and territory you work in. So it's important to know when public holidays are, because employees can get different entitlements on these days. Number 9 is notice of termination and redundancy pay. Up to 4 weeks notice of termination, 5 weeks if the employee is over 45 years of age and has at least 2 years of continuous service, and up to 16 weeks redundancy pay, both based on the length of service. So for further details, as I mentioned, head over to fairwork.gov.au to get further details. And where necessary, go to your HR professional to get further details about how you go about applying the National Employment Standards. And the last entitlement is the provision of the Fair Work Information Statement. So employers have to give each new employee a copy of the Fair Work Information Statement before or as soon as possible after they start their new job. This statement provides new employees with information about their conditions of employment. For example, what is the National Employment Standards, their right to request flexible working arrangements, the modern awards, arrangements under the Fair Work Act, individual flexibility arrangements, freedom of association and workplace rights, termination of employment, right of entry, and the role of Fair Work Ombudsman and the Fair Work Commission. So these are the 10 minimum entitlements under the National Employment Standards. So now let's look at regulation of complementary medicines. So Australia has a risk-based approach with a two-tiered system for the regulation of all medicines, including complementary medicines. You have the lower risk medicines listed under the ARTG, or the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods. You have higher risk medicines. They must be registered on the ARTG. Your lower risk medicine can be, higher risk medicines must be. Some complementary medicines are exempt from the requirement to be included on the ARTG, such as certain preparations of homeopathic medicines. In terms of getting information, the Australian Regulatory Guidelines for Complementary Medicine, the ARGCM, provides details on the regulation of complementary medicines and assists sponsors to meet their legislative obligations. So I recommend, again, if you want to learn more information, go to the various web links and get further details. We've mentioned before the Therapeutics Goods Act 1989 as the relevant legislation, and the Therapeutics Goods Regulations 1990 as the specific regulation for how we go about regulating medicinal products such as herbs, vitamins, minerals, nutritional supplements, homeopathic, and certain aromatherapy preparations. Let's look again at the Therapeutic Goods Administration. So the Regulatory Services Group includes the TGA, the Office of Gene Technology Regulator, and the Office of Chemical Safety. So with the TGA, what's important is that they safeguard and enhance the health of Australian community through effective and timely regulation of therapeutic goods. And they do this in 3 main ways. Firstly, goods undergo a pre-market assessment, and we'll talk about this in later slides. Secondly, there is a post-market monitoring and enforcement of standards. And thirdly, licensing of Australian manufacturers and verifying overseas manufacturers' compliance with the same standards as their Australian counterparts. So what happens in a pre-market assessment? A pre-market assessment for registration considers, firstly, how toxic the ingredients are. Secondly, the dosage form of the medicine. Thirdly, whether the medicine is indicated for a serious form of a disease, condition or disorder, or for the treatment, cure, management or prevention of a disease, condition or disorder. Fourth, is the medicine likely to result in significant side effects, including interactions with other medicines? And fifth, whether there may be adverse effects from prolonged use or inappropriate self-medication. So these are the 5 pre-market assessments for registering a particular medicine. Any new product not currently registered needs to be validated as, number 1, a clearly established identity, 2, having an established traditional use, and 3, have demonstrated therapeutic value. The TGA post-market regulatory activities relate to the monitoring of the continuing safety, quality and efficacy of listed, registered and included therapeutics goods once they are on the market. So for more information, head over to the TGA and have a look at some of the regulatory frameworks that they have in place. The TGA also undertakes listed complementary medicine compliance reviews, and again you can refer to the web link to get an idea of what the reviews are for these various complementary medicines. So this is just a pictorial view of the arrangements of the TGA and how they're assessed and how they're monitored, and the Schedule 14 under the Therapeutics Goods Act 1989. Sometimes medicines, including complementary medicines, have unexpected and undesirable effects. So this needs to be reported to the TGA. So if you experience an adverse effect or event, you should seek advice from a health professional and then report that adverse event to the TGA. This is important because the TGA maintains a strong pharmacovigilance program. So they are always assessing and getting feedback from consumers about the various medicines that have been registered. Sponsors of medicines are required to report to the TGA any suspected adverse reactions for their medicines. What about advertising of complementary medicines? The marketing and advertising of therapeutic goods, including complementary medicines, is to be conducted in a manner that firstly promotes the quality use of the product, is socially responsible, and does not mislead or deceive the consumer. This is all located under the Therapeutic Goods Act, which adopts the Therapeutic Goods Advertising Code, the TGAC, and there are also supporting regulations, the Trade Practices Act, and other relevant laws. Under Section 6 of the Therapeutic Goods Advertising Code, also known as the Minimum Requirements, it states that an advertisement for therapeutic goods shall contain the following. So these are the minimum requirements if you're advertising complementary medicines. Firstly, it has to have the trade name of the good. Secondly, a reference to the approved or permitted indication for the use of the goods. And thirdly, where applicable, a list of ingredients or the following statement prominently displayed or communicated. So standing out so as to be easily read from a normal viewing distance and or heard and understood. If you're advertising for medicines in televisions or radio or newspapers or magazines, it needs to be approved before publication. Advertising appearing in newspapers and consumer magazines must include the approval number. This approval number is usually in small print and begins with the letter ASMI or CHC, followed by a 5 or 6 digit number and date code. Approvals are valid for 2 years. Anyone who has a complaint about an advertisement for therapeutic goods and all complaints are treated in confidence. So go to the tga.gov.au website to learn more about making a complaint about an advertisement that you've seen. When lodging a complaint, please include where possible the name of the advertiser, a copy of the advertisement, the name of the publication and the date published, and details of what it is about the advertisement that is unacceptable to you. So this is the address where you can send the complaint to. Let's look at labeling and packaging requirements. Under the Therapeutics Goods Act 1989, it specifies that therapeutic goods must not be imported, supplied, or exported if they do not meet applicable standards. So there are a number of therapeutic goods orders that specify standards relating to labeling and packaging of therapeutics goods. So there is the TGO 69 with regards to general labeling requirements. So this applies to prescription, non-prescription, complementary, and exempt medicines. You have the TGO 80, which is referring to child-resistant packaging. And then you can also apply to the standard for uniform scheduling of drugs and poisons. In relation to labeling, the TGA evaluators check that the label contains specific information, and this includes the product name, name of all active ingredients and their quantity, in some cases excipient information, batch number, the expiry date, relevant warning advisory statements, storage conditions, directions for use, and in most cases the indications for which the product is used. In terms of your label, the information has to be in English, durable, legible lettering, not less than 1.5 millimeters in height. The TGA evaluators are also assessing the shelf life. What is the scientific evidence that's provided in support of that shelf life? So your expiry dates. Whether the product name looks or sounds like another product. Looking at the patient information as well, ensuring that the content is relevant and meets the required specifications. They also have to ensure that medicines containing active ingredients listed in the TGO 80 are packaged in a way that is designed to be resistant to opening by children, and that the elements of the TEP Code of Practice has been met. So there is a lot of information and guidance documents that will help you in terms of best practice guidelines and codes. So if you're in the business of providing products or manufacturing products and packaging products, these are some websites and guidance documents that will help you in providing information. So by all means, please click on them and get more information. So here is some more. So let's now move on to workplace health and safety. So we'll just cover really one slide on this in terms of the regulations, and then we'll cover more detail in session 11. So Safe Work Australia is the principal national organisation driving national policy development regarding workplace health and safety. Your various Commonwealth states and territories are responsible for regulating and enforcing workplace health and safety legislation in their jurisdictions. There's now a uniform model workplace health and safety legislation in all states and territories that follow this model, except for Victoria and Western Australia. Regulations are enforceable. So these are workplace health and safety regulations. Let's look at now the regulating of goods and services and the protection of consumers and clients. The Competition and Consumers Act 2010, formerly known as the Trade Practices Act 1974, is the national law that governs how all businesses in Australia must deal with their competitors, suppliers and customers. The law is designed to enable all businesses to compete on the merits in a fair and open market, while ensuring consumers are also treated fairly. Specific provisions relating to the treatment of consumers can be found in the Australian Consumers Law. The Australian Competition and Consumers Commission, the ACCC, is the national government agency which promotes compliance with the Competition and Consumers Act, and where necessary takes legal action against businesses that break that law. So head over to the accc.gov.au to look at your specific rights and responsibilities. So there's a really good document, the Small Business and Competition and Consumers Act, Your Rights and Responsibilities, that will help you. That publication will give you some guidance in terms of the rights and obligations of small businesses. Take time to read that document, paying specific attention to the following areas. What are the requirements under consumer guarantees, sales practices, product safety, false or misleading behaviors or statements, unconscionable act and conduct, dealing with suppliers and other businesses which purchase your goods and services, and how do you go about handling complaints. So it's a really useful document, and you can use some of the guidelines in that document for your policies and procedures. Let's look at some regulations relating to local government and your local council. Every council and local government have different regulations. So pay specific attention to zoning laws, zoning requirements, and other issues such as home business requirements, for example, skin penetration, flooring, fire, health, and environmental requirements. You must gain council approval for any relevant issues before you begin operating your business. Council and government regulations can limit your business activities. So a really big recommendation is to look at the Australian Business License and Information Service, ABLIS, because they will help business operators and people considering starting a business. The ABLIS system can identify relevant state, territory, local and Australian government licenses, permits, approvals, regulations, and codes of practices that apply to your business based on various information that you input into that database. So I highly recommend that you go to ablis.business.gov.au and have a look at what they do. Other information includes the name, address, and phone numbers of the issuing departments, any fees and duration of each license, and the various forms to be completed. There's two options for obtaining information. There's an overview and there's a report. So again, highly recommend that you go to the Australian Business Licensing and Information Service. As well as that, ABLIS complements the Australian Business Account, which is a national online service that helps you manage your government-related licenses, permits, and registration. It's a free business account, and it can save relevant compliance regulations. It's basically a to-do list. You use your ABA details to pre-fill licenses, permits, or application forms. You are able to submit and pay government application forms online where available, and it deals with all levels of government in all states and territories for certain transactions. So this is the Australian Business Account. So let's look at other registrations that are applicable to your business. We've mentioned earlier the requirement for registering your business name. Register it with the Australian Securities and Investment Commission, ASIC. You need to register your name before you spend money on signage, printed material, name tags, or uniforms displaying your business name. So a business name is different from a company name. So you need to bear that in mind, and we've discussed them a little bit earlier in terms of the differences between an ABN and an ACN. Registering a company name prevents an identical business name or company name from being registered by competitors anywhere in Australia. So again, go to ASIC to look at the business name register. And if you want to further protect your business name, then go for trademarks, which we've discussed earlier. You may also register your domain name, so your web address. So there's many services out there that provide it. You can look at the public Who Is service to check for the availability of your domain name. You can also register your domain name looking at AUDA accredited registers to find an accredited registrar and follow the registration instructions. Services, charges, terms and conditions may vary from registrar to registrar. So check the differences carefully before you commit. We've mentioned before registration of your ABN. Your ABN, again, a reminder, a unique 11-digit number that identifies your business to the ATO, the Australian Taxation Office, and other areas of government. It lets you lodge business activity statements, BAS, confirm your business identity to others when ordering and invoicing, for claiming GST credits, claiming energy grant credits, and register an Australian domain name. An ABN registration is not mandatory. However, you should note that your business can trade without an ABN, but any business you deal with may withhold 46.5% of their payments to you. This is the current top marginal tax rate, and pay this amount to the ATO. So again, make sure that you understand the relevant requirements under the ATO. In terms of tax registrations, there are certain tax requirements that you need to register. For example, fringe benefits tax, FBT, GST, and PAYG. So refer to your relevant tax accountant or financial advisor with regards to which of these various tax applies to your organization. Let's look at music licenses. If you play radio or television, or you play recorded music or videos, there are certain music licenses that you need. For radio and television, the Public Performance Broadcast or Diffusion from the Australasian Performing Right Association, APRA, they collect revenue for all copyright music. Fees vary, and it can take up to 10 days to process. The annual fee varies between $50 to $100. If you're playing recorded music or videos to customers in your business, you need the PPCA, which is the Public Performance or Protected Sound Recordings from the Phonographic Performance Company of Australia, with music video clips from the PPCA. And fees vary again, can take up to 5 days to process. Annual license fees between $50 to $60, permitting the license holder to broadcast music into a space with a maximum floor space of 140 square meters. So bear this in mind if you're playing music and creating that atmosphere for your clinic. Just finishing up, we're looking briefly at records and record keeping. There is an e-health record system, which is a national system that enables people to share their health information with their healthcare providers. Important to note that the objectives of the e-health record system is to provide access, to improve availability and quality of health information, improve coordination of health information. This e-health record is an electronic system, and it enables access online, and this will continue to grow to contain the summary of a person's key healthcare events and activities, including medical histories, allergies, and medications. Registration for the system is entirely voluntary. So if you want to get more information, head over to health.gov.au and you get more information about the e-health record system. Another regulation that you need to know of is the Personally Controlled Electronic Health Records Act 2012, and this prescribes the circumstances in which an entity can use information in the e-health record system. It's a legal framework for the e-health record system. Another important regulation is the Healthcare Identifiers Act 2010 and the Healthcare Identifiers Regulation 2010. This provides key foundation to the e-health record system by establishing the Healthcare Identifiers Service. This is a way of uniquely identifying individuals, healthcare provider organizations, and individual healthcare providers. Clinicians in the healthcare organizations involved in person's care can upload, view, and download clinical documents, including what happens in terms of their events, discharge summary, shared health summary, including medications, diagnosis and treatments, any specialist letters, referrals, including details required by the specialist, prescriptions, and medical dispense records. So this is an electronic system, and it basically allows compliance in terms of having all of that information recorded securely and available for certain clinicians. There's also privacy and security features. There's audit trails of access to the records and the ability for consumers to create access controls. There's requirements for digital signing of clinical documents and a multi-layered ICT systems of firewalls, gateways, and portals to ensure that only authorized users can access the system. So this is session 4, regulatory issues. And these are the revision questions that you should be able to answer at the end of this session. So firstly, looking at the two models for health sector regulation. What are they? What is the NRAS and how does it protect consumers? What is the purpose of the National Code of Conduct for Healthcare Workers? Who in your state or territory deals with health complaints and possible breaches of that National Code of Conduct? What are the potential consequences for a healthcare worker if they do not comply by a prohibition order? Looking at professional associations, what are the advantages and disadvantages of them? What is the differences between various insurances, for example, professional indemnity and public liability insurances? Looking at legislation for the protection of workers in Australia, what is that legislation? We covered the national employment standards. So you need to be able to list some of those minimum employment entitlements. What is the role of the TGA and how do they regulate therapeutic goods? What are the considerations that need to be taken into account during a pre-market assessment for registration of a complementary medicine? When we're looking at marketing and advertising, what are the two pieces of legislation? What are the minimum requirements in terms of advertising for a TGA good as required by the TGAC? In terms of TGA regulatory framework, what are some labeling and packaging requirements? You also need to understand and to be able to define terms like ABN, FBT, GST, and PAYG. In terms of music licenses, what are the two types of music licenses required if you're playing music in a clinical setting? What act covers identification of patients nationally? And what is the e-health record system? So this is session 4, part B, regulatory issues for SOCE311, establish and manage your practice.